Good evening, and welcome to our second regularly scheduled meeting, June 19th. We do know that the meeting has been officially warned, as we had an executive session beforehand. I will accept the motion for the special meeting for Tuesday, June 5th.
I move to approve the minutes from the special meeting on June 5th as presented.
Any additions, corrections, deletions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I would.
3, 0, 1. Thank you. And I would accept a motion for the minutes of our regularly scheduled meeting on June 5th.
I move to approve the minutes from the regular June 5 meeting as presented.
Again, any additions, corrections, deletions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And 1 abstention, 3, 0, 1. Chair's remarks, only a few. I'd just like to congratulate all the graduates in the area high schools with all the graduation festivities happening this past week. And with school out, please take extra precautions as the kids are out on the street and they're out on bicycles and they're not always as attentive as we would like them to be. And so we need to pay extra attention, as we should be doing every day, so we don't have any mishaps with the youth of our community. And that's about all I have. Barb, do you have anything?
I don't, except I believe there were minutes from a June 7th special meeting that need to be approved. That's the Thursday
That's
meeting.
right. Excuse me. I have that here.
So I also move to approve the minutes from the special June 7, 2012 meeting as presented.
Okay. And additions, corrections, deletions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Abstentions? Would be 1, so 3, 0, 1. One other thing I would say is I'd like to thank the Chamber for recognizing the municipality as the Corporate Citizen of the Year. It was a great honor for the municipality. I'm not sure I've ever heard of municipalities being recognized by a Chamber of Commerce, but as I said at the event, not only do we have a great administrative team, great department heads, but we have very attentive and hard-working staff members. So congratulations to all those people that made that award happen. Barb, you don't have anything? Select Board Committee reports? Ken?
I just attended the Town Arts Committee meeting today. They had yet another great meeting, and I encourage people to go. And they talked about, again, trying to figure out different ways of creating revenue for specific projects, not just for public art, but for specific projects. A arts fair, a crafts fair for local artists to get a table, and then also discussion of the concrete quilt, which takes place this Sunday, starting at 9 a.m. in the High Grove parking lot. And we want to thank Steve Barrett and his crew because they're going to clean up and prep the wall for the quilt to be painted. And if anybody wants to paint a panel, a 3x6 panel, that in some way commemorates this 30th anniversary of HIV and AIDS in the U.S., just show up Sunday morning, 9 a.m. this Sunday in the High Grove parking lot.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Oh, and I just also want to say that thank you to All Souls Church, which they're donating their collection plate for the whole month of June to support this project.
Very good. Thank you.
I had the opportunity to attend a gathering for Joyce Searles, who's retired from the town clerk's office. I want to thank her once again for 23 years of service to the town. We'll also be having, I think this coming Tuesday, our next Traffic Safety Committee meeting. We will be addressing I expect,
I did have something to say.
I think we'll be addressing continuing issues about pedestrian safety at that meeting, including potential for some traffic calming measures near the park, Living Memorial Park, and some efforts that are being made by Local Motion out of Burlington to help us with the education campaign that we're undertaking. So anybody who's interested in attending the Traffic Safety Committee meeting, that'll be 8:30 in the morning next Tuesday here in the Select Board meeting room.
All right, I'm gonna,
Sorry about that. I did forget I was going to give an update on the pedestrian safety, and it slipped my mind. With regard to, there have been several projects that we've taken on with regard to enhancing safety for pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorists. One of those was a review of the street lighting and where the crosswalks are. The Energy Committee, I met with them last week, and they have a plan that they will be beginning to implement. I think they're going to come to the board at their July meeting, so to do more of a public announcement of where they're looking at. But they've identified 3 different types of zones would have different lighting criteria, and we would also, as well as distance between streetlights, that would be more formalized. We have talked with the CVPS. They actually are the owners of our streetlights. They will be doing this. Initially, it looked it was going to cost us, as we're trying to. During this review, we're also trying to move to the LED lights, which would also save money. And initially, it looked like it was going to cost the town upwards over $30,000, because what happens if a street light's not fully depreciated and CVPS replaces it with a different light, you pay off that depreciation. Steve Barrett, working with Efficiency Vermont and with the Energy Committee, Efficiency Vermont is actually going to be paying that depreciation value, which is real cash. And so it's going to be approximately a 1 to 2 year process as we move forward, changing over the lights, enhancing the lighting, and making it actually more appropriate to the different sections. So if you live on, along a busy road like Western Avenue, it's one type of lighting. If you live in just a residential neighborhood, it's another, and there's another zone for some of the mixed-use areas. In addition, I have spoken with some of the organizers with Local Motion, which is a private entity organization outside of Burlington, and what they look at is trying to improve safety for everyone. Again, they look at bicyclists, pedestrians, and drivers. They have distracted driver programs. They have a lot of different programs. They work actually more than just Burlington, but actually in the northern area of Vermont. They are putting in a grant with the Governor's Highway Safety. Board's aware of that program because we've been funded most years is with Governor Highway Safety. And in fact, it funded some of our directed patrol that was directed for pedestrian safety. They're putting together a grant that would allow them to come down and share their programming. They would come and they would be doing listening to our concerns and developing kind of a program for education, for promotions, for training. They have 5 different areas: increasing youth, teen, young adult bike helmet use, promoting safe behaviors for people on foot and on bike, enhancing community awareness about the rights and responsibility for road users, all road users, reducing driver distraction in densely populated areas, and increasing local law enforcement capacity to enforce traffic laws that enhance the safety of people on foot and on bike. And so I'll be writing a letter of support for their grant, and that's getting that done probably tomorrow. And hope they will hopefully hear about it, whether they are awarded the funding in August. And I think with that, then they'll be looking at what what capacity we already have, what we have in place, what we've already done, and then how they can help us kind of go on to the next steps. So it actually is very exciting and should be helpful. Want to thank, I know David has talked with this group. Molly Burke has talked with the group. There have been several different people. Alice Charkis has talked with the group. So they're really interested and excited about working with Brattleboro as well.
Can I follow up on that, Barb, and just ask, when we were talking, myself and the education director at Locomotion, about the funding possibilities, I had a question about whether they would need anybody from the town to participate with them in the grant application. Can you explain whether we're going to be working with them or needing to sponsor that grant application, or whether that grant will just be directly through Locomotion and then they'll provide us hopefully with services?
Directly through Locomotion with a letter of support from me, talking about how we anticipate working together, the town of Brattleboro working together with Locomotion. There are match requirements for the grant, but they can be done in kind, and that's what Locomotion is talked to me about, which is this, there's going to have to be specified people here who are kind of the lead people here. I assume it probably would be myself or Patrick. And so we're looking at, so it would be a grant match, but it would be in kind.
Thanks.
Dora?
I just wanted to add to that. Locomotion is the entity that did the study for the state on the bike and pedestrian issues, and there was a report. I reported on it in the select board meeting a couple of months ago after they had the Vermont Interactive Television hearing on that report. So that is available through the state if people want to read that. A lot of what they have in that report is going to be probably what they're putting in for the application here. I also want to say that as far as funding, that study that we did with the AARP had in the report, the book that was given out to the attendees, it had a whole list of possible funding sources. So that might be something to look at as well.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Public participation, an opportunity for you to speak about an issue that you're concerned with that is not on our agenda here this evening. If you raise your hand, I'll call on you, and when you do, you come up to the microphone and tell us your name and what town you're from, and we'll give you about 2 minutes to talk about, again, anything that's not on our agenda here this evening. Anyone here for public participation? Okay, just move the meeting along by 15 minutes. I'll accept a motion to go into liquor commissioners.
To go into liquor commissioners.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 4-0. We are now liquor commissioners.
And first up is a caterer's permit from Portside Inc. This is for event in a tent. And Portside Inc., for others who might know it, is Nesbitt Portside Tavern. Event in a tent is an event that is occurring on the Familari, or Vermont Business and Agricultural Center Farm at Familari Farm. It will be June 30th from 12 noon till 6 p.m. It's a classical music event, and it's sponsored by Music New England. And Mark, you're affiliated with that too, right?
Yes, I have Music New England.
Okay, you are, okay. So we have, they are hoping Portside Inc. would be catering it with just beer, I believe, right?
Beer and wine.
Beer and wine. And they're anticipating maybe up to 700 or 750,000 people possibly in attendance. They came to a department head meeting, spoke with department heads, had separate meetings, I believe, with the police and fire departments and with Public Works, and Assistant Fire Chief Peter Lynch is scheduled to do a site visit the day before the actual event to make sure everything's set up well. But if the board would indulge, it might be nice to hear from both of these gentlemen with regard to a little bit more specifics, promotion on the event, as well as the liquor license itself, the catering license.
So, for those who don't know,
Or you can come up to the table, whatever is.
Oh, yeah.
And state your name, please.
Mark Burke, and I'm from Music New England, which is a nonprofit organized to put on just such an event. And our first event will be on the Familari Fields, June 30th, as Barb said. It is going to be quite a spectacular event. Just to give you a quick snapshot of what we're doing, on the field will be pitched a tent that's 100 by 100, so it's pretty huge. It can theoretically seat up to 1,000 people. We'll probably have 800 or so seats in the tent. They'll be picnicking around the tent. Sound will be projected inside the tent and outside the tent. The gates open at noon. The show is actually at 3. From noon to 3 will be strolling minstrels, clowns, many workshops, including how to learn to make and play your own didgeridoo, and drumming, circus arts, nimble arts is part of this. They'll be teaching people acrobatics, basic acrobatics, and everybody who participates in those workshops will also be able to participate with the orchestra. There's going to be a little thing for violinists. Anybody who has a violin is free to bring their violin, and they can play with the orchestra at one point. The orchestra will then begin at 3. The show will include, as I said, nimble arts. Will have their 19-foot rig in the middle of the tent doing their thing. And all the different participants from the audience will be also coming in and out of the show as we go along. As part of the picnicking time from noon to 3, so from noon to close, will be a beer garden, which Cam will be running. The beer garden is slated to be 60 by 80, follow all the liquor license rules with a double-moated snow fence. There'll be food catering provided by Hardy Ford and their their porch truck. Rescue Inc. will be on site with 2 MTs and their truck, and the police will have 2 officers stationed on site. Parking will be taking place at the high school. We have charter buses taking people back and forth from venue to the high school to try to minimize traffic issues and parking on site. What else? At the end of the show, when all the traffic is trying to leave from Fairground Road onto Canal Street, we're also going to be having, hopefully, a police officer direct traffic to try and overcome that very short light. So that's our event in a nutshell. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Now, you're setting up the tent probably where the soccer field is? Or
Correct. Yep.
across
Tent will
from-
be right on the soccer
That's
field.
the flattest spot.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it'll be sort of towards the highway side of the field.
And the price of the tickets for the,
Price of tickets $18 a person, and you can buy them online or you can buy them at the gate.
and children, the same price, or
Under 5 will be free.
under 5
Except
will be free?
free kids will have to sit on. If the tent is full, we expect them to sit on the lap of the parents.
Very good. Well, we wish you a day like today.
Thank you. Yeah, we hope for them.
And Cameron, do you have any?
If you have any concerns, I can certainly answer.
The Chief Wren has approved this.
Well, let's, Dora, do you want to get a motion on the floor, and then we'll have
Okay,
any concerns that you have?
that's fine.
To approve the caterers permit?
Oh, there it is. To approve the caterer's permit for Portside Incorporated doing business as Nesbitt's Portside Tavern for June 30th, 2012 from 12 p.m. until 8 p.m. at the Familari Farm. No, I just basically had a question.
Yep.
And that is, are you planning on, when you're doing parking at the high school, are you planning on having people there sort of directing people? Because because people can walk from there.
Yes.
And so it would be nice, other than having the bus, to have people sort
Yes.
of directing.
Yes, people can walk. There'll be at several key points, there'll be volunteers. We're also going to be, the police will be marking some of the streets local access only, so the cars can't go there, but people will be able to go there. So at those points, there'll be volunteers. We actually we're going to have a small army of volunteers to do this. It's quite an undertaking.
Thank you.
Dora, ours, my paperwork says 6 p.m., so it is 6 p.m., right? 12 to 6?
Yeah, I just put a
Oh,
little
okay.
grace period in there just for, gathering up cups and whatnot, so that we didn't extend over for cleanup and whatnot.
Well,
So you're actually looking for 11 a.m. to 7 p.m.?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know the event says 12 to 6, but just for handling of the beer and setting up and whatnot, just to make sure we...
Yeah,
but
as,
not for consumption. Consumption starts at 12 and ends at 6.
Correct.
okay, 12 to 6 then is what you want.
We're going to clear the grounds at 6.
Yeah,
Okay.
no,
So then 12 to 6 is, 12 to
Okay.
6 is,
so let's make it clear in the motion that we'll go from 11 to 7, and that consumption is between the hours of 12 and 6.
Okay.
Okay, Dora?
we'll accept that as a friendly amendment.
Yep. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 4-0. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you.
Next is an outside consumption permit for Whetstone Station Restaurant and Brewery. This is for the decks outside. I think they didn't know that, they weren't sure if they needed an outside consumption permit or not, and you do.
We do. Here we are to ask for it.
Is it fair to say we've already approved the liquor license?
Yes, we have.
Yes.
And this is just to
This is just an
amend
outside-
the approval to allow consumption on the deck upstairs?
No,
Or-
consumptions are a separate permit. Outside consumption permits are a separate permit. So it's actually, you're approving the outside consumption permit.
Right, but it's just as an accessory to the serving permit that we've already provided,
Yes,
that we've already approved.
yes.
Well, then I move to approve the outside consumption permit for Whetstone Station Restaurant and Brewery at 36 Bird Street from January through December. January through December.
Bridge Street.
I would,
June?
I would,
July?
I think that we should take the months out of this, and primarily because you're talking January, and we've already passed January. You're not open yet, and your license is going to run until next March.
Right. We didn't. That wasn't in our application. I guess that's just standard
Okay, so
language
we'll-
or something.
okay,
that was
so
in there.
We'll take out the,
All right, so I
Also-
move to approve the outside consumption permit for Whetstone Station Restaurant and Brewery at 36 Bird Street, at 36 Bridge Street, from 10 a.m. until 1 a.m. daily.
We actually, I'd like to. That was the first reading. This agenda is the first time we've seen that 1 a.m. No one has brought that up to us in the past. And
We do.
while it will be conducive to our normal operating hours, will be earlier. We would like to reserve the right on occasions and whatnot to follow the 2 a.m. law that
well,
applies.
I think, to be honest with you, our past practice with outside consumption,
Is that just for the outside? Is that what you're?
That's for
Actually,
both.
that's for both.
well,
Okay.
The town has stopped approving licenses for 2 a.m., and I apologize, it should have been told to you when you filled out the application.
Okay.
And it was actually the chief wren who caught it, so you can blame him.
Okay. Will do.
I mean, it's up to the board, it's to the board's discretion. That's just been what the board has been doing.
Dora?
Well, just to explain the reason for that policy, that it just makes it easier for so that you're not having a bunch of people leaving the bar at 2 a.m. And a lot of commotion, so people sort of filter out, particularly if you're having music or something else going on in the bar. That's why.
2 or 3 years ago, when we started having some issues in the downtown area, that was a decision made by the board, but this board can do as it pleases.
So we'll strike the language January through December. and just go from 10 a.m. to 1 a.m. Okay?
When are you guys going to be open?
We're opening our soft opening next weekend, hopefully.
Rock on. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
They must be magicians, because I walked in there the other day.
Well, not the inside. It'll just be the deck and limited menu. The kitchen is, 99% done, and the deck looks great.
Excellent.
So
I'm excited for it. because
You'll all be
This
invited,
is going to
yes.
be pretty special.
I will be watching the Union Station ribbon cutting.
that's
your
right,
deck.
from the deck. Perfect. It's the perfect spot.
Okay, all those in favor of that motion on the floor signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed, 4-0. Thank you, and again, good luck.
The third and final is a commercial catering license, a new license. Tristan Salino is here. This was a new license approved by the state legislature, and it is for caterers who have a commercial kitchen but don't have one place where they do business.
Right. So, yeah, this is brand new for everybody, and I have commercial kitchen space that I rent at the American Legion, and this would be to license me to do off-premise catering. I don't have access to the banquet facilities or the bars at the Legion. That's covered by them by contract with our rental agreement. So it would be strictly off-premise, and it goes through the same process that any catered event for off-premise liquor consumption goes through, where each event is approved by the liquor authority for whichever town that you're in. So any event would go through the same process where you get the event license submitted to the town clerk and sent out to the state.
Now, how does this how does this affect your traveling? Would this be part of your traveling pizza?
Could be,
No?
yeah, it could be. Basically, I mean, it wouldn't be something that I would routinely serve just randomly, because I'd have to submit to the state and to whatever town we're in a request to cater, which is the administrative approval. So it's not a shortcut to a retail process.
A
It's,
traveling retail license.
it would be, if somebody hired us for a wedding to do pizza and serve draft beer, say in Marlboro, not in Brattleboro, we'd have to go before the select board specifically. Here, I would fill out a request to cater, submit it to the town clerk, because you've given that town clerk administrative approval. That's submitted to the state. The state contacts Bill Manch, who's the liquor inspector. Once he's approved it, then it comes back to the town clerk, and I get a copy in my email that says that that event has been approved. So it's town by town, it's different, but all of it follows the same process that's been in place. It's just that for the first time, they've said that a caterer who doesn't have who only has a commercial catering kitchen can apply. It used to be basically limited to restaurants. So restaurants were doing off-premise catering for alcohol, which is a sort of an eccentricity of the law.
Okay.
Breaking new ground.
Breaking new ground.
Thank you for the explanation.
I move to approve the commercial catering license for Enterra Sustainability Management Group, LLC, doing business as Enterra Catering and organic catered wood-fired pizza at 32 Linden Street.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 4-0. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you.
I'll accept the motion to adjourn as liquor commissioners.
To adjourn as liquor commissioners.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 4-0. I'll accept a motion to go into water and sewer commissioners.
Go ahead.
Move to go into water and sewer commissioners.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 4-0. We are water and sewer commissioners.
Okay, first up is your monthly report from Hoyle Tanner with regard to progress on the wastewater treatment plant upgrade. And what you will see is that things are progressing very nicely there. As of May 31st, about 73% of the project time has elapsed, and about 72% of the work has been accomplished. So they appear to be continuing to be on schedule as well as on budget. Pile driving, all of the piles have been driven, and I think that was one of our bigger unknowns there. It was about 7% higher than the engineer's estimate. I believe if the board recalls, when they first started this, it was was more than 7%, and then we ran a really good stretch, and we're at and ending with the 7%. That is an overage value of approximately $32,500. There are, the memo also then talks about project change summaries that the board will be seeing possibly in the future, and they tend to be smaller change summary changes that will be coming, and actually the sum total being with that 32,000 will have about, I think, maybe about 6,000 over in change. So we if you look at what they propose, we're still have not used any of our contingency at this point. So, which is very good, because that would be additional money we'd have to be borrowing if we do start using that money.
Barb, can you just speak to when the project, the construction is anticipated to be completed, and when we expect the whole new facility to be online?
The completion date is September, I believe, is in September or October, and that's when that occurs. That's actually when it will be all online. Things are kind of going online as they go along, but I believe we're looking at a September. Do you know anything different, or?
I was hearing December.
December?
Yes.
Really? Okay.
Looking at their cash flow projections, it looks to me like there'll be money spent up through December.
I'm wondering if that's final payments that will be made, because, I mean, they could be doing some internal building work, I guess, still then, but we probably would be online operationally, because I think so we can get a better answer on that. Obviously, Ricky Thier has decided that he doesn't have to come anymore, since he's only got about a week left of his employment. We could probably terminate him, I guess, before. So we can get a better answer on that for you.
I actually had November written down.
You have November written down?
Yeah.
Sometime this fall is fair to say.
That's right. Actually, that's what the projection was for.
Sometime in
November.
2012.
Yep.
Okay.
Probably after the Union Station project.
Next up is the loan.
John, I'm going to let you talk on this.
Okay, thanks, Barb.
Ask you to speak to this.
Sure. Included in the packet is a short memo from me regarding this loan change. And what this is the increase in one of our state revolving loans by $4 million to a total of $14,064,704. The $4 million increase is the allocation for fiscal year 13. And as you'll see in a minute, our cash flow is getting to the point where we need to file this promptly and get it into the state for the approval process. It does take, it could take 2 months before we could see the release of the funds. So it does require your signature, and I think Jan has a copy of that for you to sign this evening, but that's what it's all about.
John, it's fair to say this is the 0% loan, at least until we start paying back?
Yeah, the loan becomes payable 2 years after completion of the project. The loan carries a 0 interest rate, but it carries a 2% administrative fee, which is basically the same as an interest rate.
And just to be clear, I believe they have actually approved the loan itself, and this is just the amendment adding it to the other.
Adding it to the loan
Adding
documents.
it to the loan document. So the board, this gets a little confusing because you've actually already approved that amount, and you're just now amending the documents.
This is the application to amend. Okay, then
And then you'll get the
Conservation
documents.
and the Bond Bank will actually produce the amendments.
Okay.
So I move to approve an application for amendment to the town's existing construction loan RF1-127 to the wastewater treatment plant in the amount of $4 million for the total loan request of $14,064,704.
Further discussion? Yes.
Just a quick question. Pat D'Angelo, District 2. Is
That's
there...
only because so the public can hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's for the TV, Pat.
Oh, that's me, TV person. Does anyone know why almost a third more of the original loan is needed. I believe the original loan was for 10 million, and now we're increasing by 4 million. So I'm wondering if anyone knows the reason for that. What happened?
Actually, we're maxed at the amount of money that can be taken, that can be borrowed from the revolving loan fund. It has a max of 2 million each year. And so the actual financial plan was to borrow up to the 14 million, and this is actually just that last amount. So it's just a restriction on how the state releases the funding, and they cap it at 2 million a year.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 4-0.
And last on the wastewater treatment, as we continue this discussion, quarterly financial update, John.
So following the application for amendment is a listing of the sources and uses of funding for the wastewater project. The top says Brattleboro Wastewater Treatment Facility Upgrade Funding Sources and Uses. And you can see it's broken into 4 sections. Those are the 4 funding sources for the project. The top 2 series of numbers are the 2 revolving loans that we have from the state. The third series of numbers is the recovery zone bond that we issued $13.5 million. And the last funding piece is a grant, a CDEF grant. And at the very bottom of the page, you can see that we have drawn down from our funding sources, as of today, a total of $20,517,818.90. So the project is well along. We have a total balance left of the approved funding today of $7,077,785.10. So we're getting to the point where, as I said earlier, the $4 million increase in the revolving loan funding is really needed to finish off this project.
Dora?
For the benefit of the public, can you give a little explanation, particularly of what the recovery zone bond is and this CDF grant?
The CDEF grant is a grant from the Energy Fund. That's funded by Vermont Yankee, and the state awards grants to various projects for energy efficient projects that a municipality may undertake. The recovery zone bond is just a funding source where we actually went to the bond bank and filed an application with the bond bank. We actually bonded for the full $13.5 million, and those funds are in the bank, and we draw them down as we need for the project. It's not part of the revolving loan fund. It's a straight bond through the bond bank that the town issued.
Further questions, inquiries from the public?
Pat D'Angelo again, District 2. I was just thinking back to the Transportation Center and the whole business about the bond on the Transportation Center. What kind of a bond is this? Is this dependent on the taxpayers to pay back? It couldn't be a revenue bond, right?
It's not a revenue bond.
It is not.
It's a general obligation bond.
It's a general obligation. Okay, thank you.
Okay. I'll accept the motion to adjourn as Water and Sewer Commissioners.
To adjourn as Water and Sewer Commissioners.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 4-0. Regular business.
Okay, financial report for the period ending May 31st. John O'Connor.
So following the last analysis that we just looked at is the monthly financial report through the end of May. The general fund expenditures are at 90.2% of the annual budget. We were expecting that on an even 12-month basis it would be at 91.67%, so we've actually spent a little bit less than what we had forecast in the budget. We're forecasting at this point I'm forecasting a surplus for the year. Conservatively, I think it could be around 200,000, potentially more than that. And as you remember, we actually budgeted a deficit for the year of $430,000. So this is a swing of $600,000. And I do think that's a conservative figure. The budgetary exposure from Tropical Storm Irene is estimated to be about $60,000. As you know, the governor requested and the president approved FEMA paying 90% of the total cost of Irene. The state is paying 5%, and the town is now paying 5%. Originally, that split was 75 from FEMA, 15 from the state, and 10 from the town. So our portion of that has dropped. Utilities fund, they're at 96.9% of their expenditures, so they are above the where they would be on a pro rata basis for the year. The parking fund is at 102.1%. Again, their budget is over where they would be on a pro rata basis. In the parking fund, those expenditures are primarily Tropical Storm Irene, and most of them are offset by insurance claims. So even though expenses are up, revenues are also up from insurance claims. The utility fund, most of their overrun also is Tropical Storm Irene. And we're expecting an exposure there of about $19,000 from Irene. So that's kind of the financial report. We do have all of the line item budgets. If you have any questions on any of the line items, we can try to answer those for you. We also have the loan report included as part of the package. And all of our loans are currently current or under agreement, so that's good. We did have one of the loans that's outstanding, and it's a loan is $18,396 outstanding. The principal for that loan passed away, and we are working with Bob to see when the estate is set up and what we need to do to file our claim with the estate. And we have a report in there on the program income that's available to be awarded to various projects. It's the VCDP money, that's second generation. We've paid back the first loan, and now that 50% of those funds are available to us, and you can see there's $410,000 available for that. And then lastly is the grant fund, yes, the large one, which lists all of our grants and where we stand on all of our grants.
Well, let me just say that's the best news that I've heard today is $600,000 swing, deficit to positive. I have said in the past, I think that the outstanding work demonstrated by our administration and our department heads staying within budget has taken us from several years ago when we were having some huge financial difficulties to some, for lack of a better word, much more prosperous times in our reserve fund. So again, thank you to the administration and our department heads. Any other board members have any questions?
If I can just add really briefly, part of that is really Tropical Storm Irene has really kind of messed with our with some of the accounting, because there is some of that is due because there is reimbursement for regular salary time that comes through Tropical Storm Irene, and so some of that is kind of somewhat of a windfall, if you want to use that, due to the tropical storm. I just wanted to let it be known I appreciate the compliment. I think we and the board work very hard to make sure the budgets are in line. But again, we're going to really need to, at the end of this year, really review and get a really good feeling of how exactly the tropical storm has impacted our budget, and so that we can get a better idea of, moving forward on. I mean, because really we want to, it's always nice to have a surplus at the end, but we want to make sure that we're budgeting appropriately.
The last day is when, the fiscal year? I'm sorry.
June 30th.
June, it's the end, okay.
Last day of June. Okay.
Next then is, in the board's packet, we said that we had, we were piggybacking with Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union for heating fuel oil bids. Those came in yesterday. The board received a memorandum from John. They were opened yesterday. There were, do you want to just talk to it, John?
Sure.
Do you have your memo? Or
Yeah.
No? Okay.
Yep. We received 5 bids. Together we went out. There were 2 different bids. One was for 159,300 gallons. The other was for 138,300 gallons. The difference was the school district wanted 2 different quotes on 2 different amounts. The town's amount was 80,800 gallons for the year. So we got the bids in, and we got 5 bids. The bids ranged from $2.98.9 per gallon to $3.33 per gallon. The lowest bidder was Discount Oil out of Keene, New Hampshire at $2.98.9 per gallon. Last year we entered into an agreement prepaid fuel oil, and we paid $3.42.9 per gallon. So this is a pretty good drop from where we were last year. We feel pretty good about this. And so we are asking the board to approve the town manager on behalf of the town to enter into a fuel agreement with Discount Oil for the 80,800 gallons of number 2 heating fuel at $2.98.9 per gallon.
So moved.
The motion has been made here. Further questions?
Did we budget this year at the 349?
I believe we did. I was asked that question earlier, and I believe we did. I don't think we would have budgeted less than we did. However, we also we need to go back and look at some. We've also had some changes in the heating. We projected this year that we'd have some additional savings that we realized, but mainly because we didn't use as much fuel oil. I would anticipate we will have some additional that we will be. We have more in our budgeted line items for fuel oil than we'll need, but we need to go back and look at that now with these numbers in place.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 4-0. Thank you.
I would just hope that over the course of the year, obviously there's sometimes movement from line item to line item. To the extent that we've been able to save like $40,000, it looks like, in oil costs, it'd be nice to try to conserve that rather than seeing it switched to other line items over the course of the year.
Oh, I don't think we'd do that.
Yeah, I know. I think that'd be nice.
There you go. All right. Next up.
He's probably going to remember that too. Next is the board is asked to assess the $100 fine on all non-filers of the business personal property form for the year 2012.
And would you read the names?
Of the non-filers, Bascom Maple Farms, J.S. Benson Woodworking, Berkeley Veller, Greenwood, Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate, CBS Power Washing and Handyman Services, Distinctive Decor, Dutton Farm Stand, Falvey Pools and Spas, Flatterme Hair Salon, Good Bear Productions, Granite City Electric. I'm not sure what there's a hole in my page. The tattoo, I'm not sure what it is. I apologize. Lotus Graphics, McKay's Used Auto Sales, McNeil's Brewery, McNeil's Pub and Brewery, Millennium Pizza, Oak Meadow Inc., Putney Road, Sunoco, Sprite Properties, I'm sorry. Stonewall Inc., Super 8, Thai Bamboo, Vermont Culinary Islands, Vermont Inn Pizza, Viking Tattoo, VSUB LLC, Waring Woodworking, Suzanne West DMD, White Rose Pet Memorial Service, and Wyndham OB-GYN Associates.
Thank you. And I would accept the motion.
Following the public shaming, I move to assess a $100 fine on all non-filers of the business personal property form for the year 2012.
Further discussion?
Can we just get, for the benefit of the public, what kind of notice has been sent out so far?
I know I would have to ask the listers on what the process is. It's a statutory process that's followed as far as business personal property, so they would be following the statute. I know that there are letters that go out twice, but I couldn't tell you the exact process. Sorry.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 4-0. Thank you.
Street closing. Flat Street Rising. I know there are several people here. John Mack is here. Are you the only one here for this?
No, it was.
No.
Oh, okay. That's
Come up to
okay.
you can come up to the table.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, why don't you come on up? This is a street closing permit for Flat Street from Elm to Main Street from 4 to 8 p.m. on September 7th. I will let the organizers of the event speak more to what the actual event is. It's called Flat Street Rising. Representatives did come to the department head meeting to discuss the closure, and there are 2 restrictions that we do ask, and that is prior to the event that they contact the police department to ensure that in case there's coverage needed for rerouting traffic, and that'll just be a conversation you'll have with them, and also to maintain street access for emergency vehicles, and that just means don't put heavy things that can't be moved in the middle of the streets, and I know with your plans that's not an issue.
That's not an issue, yes.
Moving on to more fun things, why don't you tell us about the
Okay.
event?
Well, thank you very much for having us. I am John Mack, and this is Alyssa Bonte. I am actually appreciative, particularly knowing what it's like to be on your side of the ledger since I'm the chair in Newfane, but that has nothing to do with anything in reality here. I'm here primarily in another capacity, which is that I'm president of the board of directors of Insight Photography Project. And that's really what got me interested in this project and got me going, trying to get people together to have this event. As you've stated, we've requested the street closing just from 4 to 8. It's the first gallery walk in September 7th. The reason for the timing is, the notion is, let me take a step back. The problem that we've had at Insight is this is our 20th year, and really for the first time in many years, we're finding that not all our classes are filling. Now, our classes are, regardless of ability to pay, so most students actually come free. And it is a wonderful programming. Even this summer programming, we have some openings. So we're finding that we have openings that are going unfilled. We even had a class or 2 canceled last year, which seems really a sad thing. And what we're there for is to provide services to kids who really need something to do with themselves that's productive and creative and builds their self-esteem after school. So I got together initially with the executive director of the Boys and Girls Club and Jess Callahan of New England Youth Theater, and we started talking about what could we do that would really be an exciting event that would attract youth and their parents to come into Brattleboro and see what's available to them, and that was the notion of Flat Street Rising. Then we combined this with, I was talking to Laura Lind of Lind Motorcycle Sports, who I know is also on your agenda actually for another event. First we thought it actually was the same time. It turns out it's totally different times. But really the thought was the businesses on Flat Street have also really been struggling to recover, and that's why Alyssa is here with me. That they also need some help, so I've been working with a number of people in other contexts to try to say, can we draw positive interest to the tremendous effort that people are making to revive after the flood. We're here, we're open for business, we're doing everything possible, so it seemed like this would be a wonderful event. And so that was basically the idea. Since then, the Brattleboro Music Center has joined us, the River Gallery, the New England Center for Circus Arts, and so we've really got the Open Music Collective. A lot of people have come in. We've got planned circus demonstrations, jugglers and portable demo of circus acts. We've got from Insight a cyanotype making, which is it's too complicated to explain in a couple of words. I won't take the time for it. But a huge pinhole camera. It should really be a fun event. We have a brass band that will play. We have jazz from the Open Music Collective. We have an improv troupe from NYT, skateboard demo from Boys and Girls Club, and traditional music and instrument petting from the Music Center, and we'll ask it's planned to be an inclusive event. I haven't named all the groups for sake of time, but it should be a really exciting event, and that's why we're asking the board for your approval of our permit.
Well, we'll try to be as enthusiastic as you have been with your presentation. I would accept a motion.
Move to approve the street closing permit for Flat Street from Elm to Main Street on September 7th from 4 to 8 p.m. Organizers of the event are to contact the police department prior to the event for coverage and rerouting of traffic and to maintain street access for emergency vehicles.
Further discussion?
Will you be playing in the brass band?
I will be indeed.
Then you will see the enthusiasm.
Okay. Any other questions? Well, we wish you great weather and sunshine. All those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next, another street closing for another event in the streets. Line Motorsports. They're not here, right? Okay. They're asking to have Flat Street closed between the two arms of Elm Street. On August 3rd from 5 to 11 p.m. This is their Art on Wheels. It's a celebration of the beauty and craftsmanship of motorcycles over the past 100 years. They've held this for several years now and have not had incident. The only restriction on this is to ensure that the maintenance of street access for emergency vehicles is maintained.
And I will accept a motion.
I move to approve the street closing permit for Flat Street between the two Elm Street access points on August 3rd from 5 to 11 p.m. for Art on Wheels. Organizers of the event are to maintain street access for emergency vehicles.
Further discussion?
I don't know if it's going to be Drunk Stuntmen. I love those guys.
What's that? Dora?
The Drunk Stuntmen is the band that they're talking about.
There you go. Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 4-0.
If, with consensus of the board, would you mind if we move item N, circus permit, while we're doing our permits, and because they're looking scared that they're going to be here until midnight? Circus Smirkus is here. I didn't anticipate that anyone would be coming because this has been an annual permit. But they're requesting a circus permit for Circus Smirkus on July 18th and 19th at 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. If you folks want to come to the microphone or come to the table, it's up to you, and tell us a little bit about your event.
Circus Smirkus is a fundraiser for Kids Place in Brattleboro, and we're hoping to have a really good year this year. It's our biggest event that we host for the community, and Circus Smirkus says that we're one of the best towns for their audience. So, my name is Elizabeth Johnson. I'm the executive director of Kids Place. So, yeah, and the insurance certificate should be in by the beginning of July.
Okay.
Yeah.
We hold the permit until we get that. It's not a big deal.
Okay, fabulous.
Yeah.
And a motion, please.
I move to approve a circus permit for Circus Smirkus for a youth circus sponsored by Kids Place to be held on Vermont Business and Agricultural Center on July 18th and 19th at 2 and 7 p.m. Insurance certificate pending.
All right, further discussion, Dora?
I just want to say that this is a great event. Kids Place is an awesome asset to this community. And for people who do have TV or have online access, PBS has run a series of a documentary on the Circus Smirkus, and it's really awesome to see what goes into the kids doing that circus.
Awesome. Thank you.
All those in favor?
Could I inquire why we require the insurance for this event, but not for the other event that we approved earlier
Only for
in the agenda?
Only for circuses when they have performances. It's just by our ordinances.
Okay.
They have a insurance.
Okay. Further questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 4-0. Thank you.
Next is a conservation easement amendment request. Planning Director Rod Francis is here. The board also received, this is to amend a conservation easement of Fox Farm Road PUD. And Rod will go into more of the details on this. We did have a draft, board had in their packets the draft amendment for that conservation easement and restrictions. There was a potential conflict of interest with the town attorney, so we went to James Maxwell and had him review all the documentation. We received that yesterday, and the board it was emailed to the board, I believe, today, and it's in front of the board. He finds it is his opinion that the modification of the conservation easement areas in that area is allowed for installation of a wastewater system outside conserved lands is permissible. So just for clarification with that, I'll ask Rod to talk more specifically about what is being requested here.
So in your packets you should also have a copy of the subdivision plat as revised on June the 12th of this year. In the bottom right hand corner it says subdivision plat for Charles DeWolf. About slightly higher than midway up the piece of paper on the far left hand side is the subject property, and you'll see the area circled or highlighted on your copies. So in essence, when this PUD was formed, there were two pre-existing parcels, each with a pre-existing home. Both of those were serviced by septic systems of unknown date of installation. The home in question, so the Lot 1 property, currently owned by Ben Meadow and Leah Nussbaum, is in the process of sale, and as a condition of sale, the septic system has to be reviewed for compliance with current permitting. It failed its permit test, so a new septic system needs to be installed. Given how the original conservation easement was drawn, there's very little area for what is an accessory to the development or an accessory to the structure, in this case a home, to install a new septic system outside the conservation easement. So it was our preference that the boundaries of the conservation easement be amended such that the area outside conservation easement is large enough to accommodate a new septic system. The survey work has been completed to the satisfaction of the seller and the buyer. The proposed septic system has been designed and permitted already, assuming that this proceeds. And so the last question of interest to the board is that typically when we establish a new PUD, we require a minimum of 20% of the total land area be placed in conservation for PUDs and rural residential. In this instance, way more than that was placed in conservation easement. And so, again, typically in a situation where we want to amend conservation easement, we'll do effectively a land swap. We'll take land that's outside the easement and place it in for the land the applicant or the owner may want to take out of the easement. In this instance, that's not possible because the remainder of the parcel is in the conservation easement, so there's nothing to swap in. Any questions? Great.
Well, I just have one question, just from a process standpoint. Was this reviewed by the Conservation Commission?
The Conservation Commission doesn't have jurisdiction over this.
It doesn't?
No.
Okay.
Conservation Commission doesn't have jurisdiction over any development application.
I get that. It's just that, you know, from a citizen sort of just looking at stuff because it's the Conservation Commission.
The agreement is between the town, the select board, and the property owners. It's not between the Conservation Commission. The Conservation Commission isn't in the chain of review for that.
What I'm saying is that it would be a good idea just to bring it before the Conservation Commission just so they could review it.
The only issue with that is that to bring something before a committee or a commission for review indicates that they have jurisdiction over that review. And so I think that's somewhat of a mixed message.
Most of our committees don't really have jurisdiction over the things that they review, except for a few things. I mean, there's an awful lot of committees that are just advisory, that are looking at things just from an oversight, and they don't really have jurisdiction over the things that they're reviewing.
And I agree with that, with the exception of commissions. Commissions by statute have more authority.
Okay.
Because the authority of a conservation commission is granted by statute. So just similarly to the jurisdiction of the planning commission is determined by statute. So that they have somewhat more of a quasi-judicial almost role. So to bring something to them that's not really within their jurisdiction is, I mean, we'd have to explain, we're bringing this to you, but you don't have any say over it, which would be a little bit odd. Conservation is in their name and it's in this, but doesn't have, they don't have rules over this existing PUD.
And this is a pre-existing agreement, and it's an agreement between the select board as the representatives of the town and the property owners. And so to insert another panel for a review or other purposes would make the outcome less clear, not more clear.
I mean, we should be clear. The initial approvals of this planned unit development were granted by the Development Review Board in 2006. And if I'm not mistaken, doesn't it then go to the Planning Commission and to the Select Board, because it's essentially a mini amendment to the zoning ordinance for the purposes of this particular development.
Exactly.
And after the Development Review Board approved this planned unit development, saying that a whole bunch of the land, 90% rather than just 20%, would be conserved, it was reviewed by the Planning Commission, and I think, but certainly by the Select Board as well.
The sequence is that the PUD originates with the Planning Commission.
All right, so it starts with the Planning
Then it goes to the Select Board, and then the Select Board approves it, and then it goes to the Development Review Board. And then typically in the instances of subdivisions or PUDs, there's a separate development agreement, and that's struck between the town and the owners of the property, and it's the Select Board that is the authority that signs the development agreement. So that's the only body that does.
So there wouldn't be any reason to bring the Conservation Commission in unless it was in the first instance involved in reviewing this sort of an application. I don't think it is.
No.
Someone like to read this lengthy motion?
Sure, I was on the DRB when it was granted in the first place. So I
I
move to approve and authorize the town manager to sign the Second Amendment to grant of conservation easement and restrictions, revised Schedule A, and subdivision plat paren 060712 for Lot 1 Fox Farm PUD, aka 293 Fox Farm Road, reducing the area of the conservation easement to allow for orderly development in compliance with all applicable local and state permits for development and compliance with all applicable local and state permits for development and public health. The final recording of this agreement shall include the submission of a Mylar to the town clerk's office for recording purposes.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
The board is asked to approve a grant application for $8,000 for a video conferencing grant from the Vermont Public Libraries, for Vermont Public Libraries from the Vermont Department of Libraries and Google. What this would do is it would provide the equipment and pay for the installation, the warranty, and the training of library staff for a total of $8,000 for a video conferencing equipment.
Is there anybody here to speak to this? Because I have a question.
I can try.
Okay. I think that video conferencing is very important technology, and its availability is pretty limited. When I've been called upon to use video conferencing, for example, when I'm trying to communicate with Supreme Court without driving them up Montpelier, I've got to go up to the high school.
Correct. Yeah.
And we're getting broadband, as I understand it, as part of
actually fiber, yeah.
Fiber Connect, as part of the Fiber Connect project, which really should improve the connectivity that we've got here. I'm wondering, what is the anticipated scope of this video conferencing system? Are there procedures in place about who would be allowed to use it? Are there going to be fees that are going to be charged? Would it be for all organizations, just for government organizations, for private people? We only got excerpts from the grant materials, if I recall correctly. Well, this one was only 4 pages. I didn't see any of those questions answered. I'd like to know what protocols are going to be set up, who can use it, what it's going to cost.
We will be establishing protocols and processes that go. It will be open for the public, so it would be, essentially it's going to be in the library conference room. And so that's going to be somewhat problematic with regard to using it, because the conference room at this point is also kind of rented out for public usage. So what we would do is the idea that we have is somewhat setting it up as a rental, somewhat like we do with the rooms here, so that priority is given to town business. And to town committees, that type of thing. It would then go out, then it can be open to all, although we do have some restrictions with regard to uses for political campaigns and those types of things. With regard to policies of rent or fees for using it, that has not been decided, and actually that would first go to the library board of trustees and would then come to the board for final approval.
Cool.
Dora, excuse me.
Just as a follow-up to that, because I also have shared the same concerns that David has, but I also want to say that the Vermont Agricultural Business Education Center has video conferencing available, and I would, if we're going to establish fees or whatever, I wouldn't necessarily want to be competing with the business, particularly for people that are using it for business use. So that something like that would, should be looked at as well.
Well, wouldn't you think giving it away for free is?
Oftentimes what you'll find is that a lot of the restrictions come in with the final agreement with regard to
what they can charge in
what can be done with library, particularly with libraries.
Yeah, because we've talked about
and
putting
access.
fees on the computers. Okay, a motion, please.
I move to approve the library's application for an $8,000 video conferencing grant for Vermont Public Libraries from the Vermont Department of Libraries and Google.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 4-0. Thank you.
Next, the board is asked to accept and appropriate the Radiological Emergency Response Plan Fiscal Year 14 grant. That's in the amount of $100,750 from the Vermont Department of Public Safety. that would be used, 5,000 was for our base agreement, a base grant that can be used for a variety of things pertaining to our Emergency Operations Center. $1,500 is for pager coverage to cover cost of pagers. $1,000 is for training for the radiological officer. $20,000 is for emergency management coordination funding. 4,000 is to cover our participation in quarterly drills. 80,000 is for the emergency broadcast communication, and it's not actually for the tower. It's actually for the building in which the equipment is housed. It's not for the radio tower itself. That building it's a very old building. It has some security issues, and it has all of our communication equipment in it for the tower. And we've been working on, I think this is the second year we've put this in the grant, and the first time they've funded it. And they're actually funding it at 75%, which is a very good thing. $18,000 for electronic signs, and $250 for a cell phone enhancer for a communication trailer.
Motion, please, and then we'll have discussion.
No, you're right.
Okay, to accept the radiological emergency response plan fiscal year 14 grant and to appropriate $100,750 from Vermont Department of Public Safety for RERP expenses and program funding.
Discussion?
Are these electronic signs?
Yes.
General use or just for the emergencies that are covered by this grant?
50% of their usage would be for the grant, and that's why they're only covering 50%. But we tend to use them in most emergencies.
Thank you.
Further questions? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 4-0.
Continuing with grants, we are asked to accept and appropriate a grant of $23,304.54 from the Homeland Security Unit Swiftwater Training Grant from the State of Vermont Homeland Security Program. The odd number is because we tell them what this pays for training for Swiftwater rescue. And this was used, that kind of rescue was used during the tropical storm. And it's also used in the rivers and brooks from various times. This was training. It covered all personnel costs, station coverage, meals. It was a 4-day, 40-hour training course. And the odd amount is because they actually calculate our rates, all the costs associated with that, and then they reimburse you for that amount. So that's why it's such a funny amount.
I move to accept and appropriate $23,304.54 Homeland Security Unit Swiftwater Training Grant from the State of Vermont Homeland Security Program.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 4-0.
Next, at the May 15th meeting, the board discussed placing on this agenda the topic of adding communication and social media sections to your rules of conduct. People know rules of conduct are essentially your bylaws and how you operate, how you hold your meetings, etc. They're in the board's packet. I believe this was actually provided to board members earlier by Ken. The model social media policy written by the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. I did not attach. Did I attach the library social media policy here?
No.
As I said, I did, and then when I was looking at it, I didn't see it. And I can get that for you as well. I apologize. That's a 2-page policy.
With permission from my colleagues, I would actually like to move to table this until we're back together as a group, unless there are specific parts that people want to talk about.
I have some comments, and I can make them now, and then we can just start thinking about those.
Okay.
This social media policy does not appear to be an electronic communications policy. And this draft social media policy specifically does not apply to our website and communications that we do electronically via email that are currently in use. I'm not convinced that there's any need at this time for a social media policy. I'm not convinced at this point that there's any real need for the town to be dedicating resources to having communications via these social networking sites as part of the town's ordinary business. And so I'm not on board yet with any sort of a need for a social media policy in this form.
We actually already are. This is the problem. So the first part, I absolutely agree. This doesn't have anything to do with us communicating the way that we communicate with each other. The town is already engaged in social media use. Town departments are already engaged, and this is in no way me saying that any of them are using it inappropriately. They're using, if you just take Facebook, in 3 completely different ways. One, as, for example, the police department using it as a user, someone that you can friend. You can friend the Brattleboro Police Department. The library, I know the police department's the only one I can remember off the top of my head. The library and some other groups, some of them are using a page, so a page that anyone can go on and like, and others are doing a group, which is more restricted. Those are 3 completely different ways of communicating. The problem with those is that a citizen going on, again, I'm just using Facebook as an example, wishing to communicate with the town would do it in 3 different ways, all with the same expectation that their concerns are being addressed. So we actually do need, this social media policy does not address electronic communication. That's something different that we have to work on. But I actually think we desperately need a social media policy, given that the town has already launched, happily, in my opinion, into social media in 3 completely different ways.
All right, well, I don't engage in social media communications at all.
Yeah.
And so I've never looked at any of these sites. I have no knowledge about what's going on there. And I think that before there could just be an assumption that a policy can be discussed, there's going to have to be some presentation about what's going on and what the problem is. Because I can't respond to an issue without knowing what the concerns are in the first place.
We can do a primer.
Yeah, please.
Well, I just want to say that, just to follow up what Ken is saying, there's also some committees that are using social media in another way, which is as a discussion forum, and that, to me, is the biggest one that needs a policy. So, I do think that there should be some sort of policy for the town, and I don't necessarily know if this works, that what we have here, but I think it's a good discussion. Just to sort of follow up on the communication piece, when I talked about needing to talk about communication, I was talking about information, how information gets put out to the select board, because there are members of the select board that get some information that we don't all get, and we don't all get it in a timely manner, and so we need a policy in our rules of conduct for how that communication happens. We have sort of a line of communication that's spelled out in the charter as to who's responsible for getting the information to the chair, but we don't have a policy about how that information is given to the rest of the select board, and that's the policy that we need.
Well, obviously, I'm taking back the tabling thing. Can we talk about our email addresses for a second? The email addresses?
Mm-hmm.
Are we?
Yep, go ahead.
Are they public?
Mine's public.
Well, there you go. So, I think that they'll be up on the town website.
They are.
They're up on the town website.
Those that are up and operating are.
I set mine up and it's not.
Mine set up. All right, so
I need help.
Can we just explain that there are, the board asked to, the decision was made during I think during the goal setting, to make it a little easier for tracking of emails, electronic discussions, or not discussions, but electronic communication. And so board members had been coming in with their own email addresses. And what happens then is, so if somebody uses their work email, if your board member uses your work email, then the town emails get into your work emails. So the decision was made to create separate emails, particular to the town for select board members as they come in. So select board members now, similar to town employees, have a first initial last name at brattleboro.org. We've been trying to, working with the board members to get those addresses up and running, and to varying degrees. Some have theirs up and running, some do not. I would really suggest that the board, that this, if you're going to use these emails, it becomes a priority.
So the next step that I would like to see, which I think will go some way to addressing what Dora has said, is just to create an alias so that when any member of the public sends an email to selectboard@brattleboro.org, that it automatically goes to the 5 email addresses and the town manager. But something that someone from the community isn't going and sending us individual emails, that if they have something they want the select board to see, they send it to the alias selectboard@brattleboro.org, and then it automatically goes to the 5 of us so that we all get the information at the same time, which will take a second and a half for the IT guy to set up. And that the real public communication tool is less about our individual now brattleboro.org addresses and more about, if you want to communicate with the select board, you send an email to selectboard@brattleboro.org, and then we all get it at the same time. People will still seek out individuals, and that will happen, but
I would like to have a little more conversation
Yeah.
about this, because I think that's a real issue. I think we really need to be careful about having the slippery slope of discussions. It's really easy for select board members. You guys are on your second year. Now think back to your first year and the slippery slope of reply all and starting that that conversation in violation of open meetings law. I think for me personally, that's probably the hardest thing I have with new board members, is slapping them every time they do this reply all and starting but it really is. And if you encourage that with citizens to, I think that we need to really figure out that fine line between ease of access to the board member and violation, and the reality of the fact that the board as a body should be having conversations and discussions that are warned and
I agree.
and announced.
I'm just saying, to me, those are two different things, though. One is the ease of access and getting information to the board, and I agree. What needs to go hand in hand with that is how the board replies, and those are two very different things. My only point is about the ease of access to the board, that if you want to send something to the select board, you're not sending it to 5 different addresses, you're sending it to one address, knowing that it gets to all of us. So I'm just putting that out there. My last piece about the social media policy, and again goes back to David's first point, another thing it doesn't address, which I want to get to, but this sets the stage for, again, is the possibility of an alternative way of citizens participating in the meeting without coming here. But we can't get there without a baseline social media policy for the town. So that's looking down the road.
Dora?
Well, I just want to say that we're getting into what Ken was trying to avoid, and that is having a real discussion with not a full body, so maybe we should just,
Well,
it's-
I think that there's a range of different issues, and that we really need to inventory all the different communications related issues that need to be addressed so that we can have a comprehensive discussion. We've only just addressed some of them here. I think there are more as well. We haven't really talked globally about electronic communications and about the website, so maybe we need all of us to marshal our ideas about what communications related issues need to be addressed, and then we can have a comprehensive discussion at one time.
I like that.
Sounds good.
I mean, I would think, one of the issues that Ken raised is that somebody might send you an email to you and not send it to the rest of the board members, and that's fine. That's no different than someone making a phone call to us,
Right.
or someone stopping us when we're on the street or in the supermarket or whatever. So I think you're right. This needs to be a broader conversation about how we're going to inventory these and share information that should be shared. Again, because some people may not want their information shared with other board members.
Right.
So,
And we should say, I'm sorry, did you, I don't know if I missed this point, that these will be on the server, so in terms of public records archiving, this is a great
Yeah.
step.
yes.
Okay, not nodding very vigorously.
Well, I just wanted to comment on what you just said, Dick, because it is a little different from somebody having a conversation or a phone conversation because of the open meetings law and the fact that, you know, a written communication to a select board member is public record and accessible, you know.
It's only public record if it goes to majority of the board.
My understanding is that you can go to a select board member about select board business.
I don't think so. I think it's
There's a difference between it being,
somebody lobbies you individually about a select board issue. That's not necessarily public record.
Not necessarily, but it could be.
Depends on circumstances.
depends on your circumstances.
Okay, so we're going to
Point.
table this. We'll just,
Take
I
this
think,
up.
I think what we'll have to do as an agenda-setting
Yeah.
item,
right.
we
Yeah.
will try to figure out a process for gathering all the issues and trying to find a way to discuss them in an organized
I will
way.
be happy to do a primer as well.
Yeah.
Very good.
Sounds good.
All right, next up.
This is a follow-up on the dog shooting. At the May 1st regular meeting, board members agreed to take up the issue of the dog that was shot by the police officer on March 21st. After the Citizen Police Communication Committee had held meetings on the matter. And the CPCC has held 2 meetings. In addition, I've met twice with representatives from the Humane Society to discuss the issue. And additional, the Humane Society is at this point preparing additional training specific to law enforcement centered on animal issues. And at this point, that is where we are at.
Are there any board members that want to make any comment here? Seeing none, is there anyone from the public who would like to make comment here?
My name's Ann Wright. I live in Brattleboro. Is it possible to share any specifics about the training that's coming up from the Windham County Humane Society with the police department? Will it be mandatory? Will it be ongoing so that as new police officers come on the force, this is part of the protocol of their training locally?
The Humane Society is still developing the training, and they've been working on that for probably about the last month. So we don't have the information. As soon as we have that, we'll be doing a press release on that. All of our officers will be taking the training, and we're talking with the Humane Society on how we can do a kind of the continuous loop training with that, but we're trying to work those details out with them.
Okay, great. When I sent you an email to put this item on the agenda, there were 2 other points that I wanted to hear about or have the opportunity to discuss tonight. And are you addressing those all separately, or?
When did I get an email?
I sent you an email on May 29th asking for there to be a follow-up on this board, and you had said you would put it on tonight because you were out of town.
Right. What were the 2?
The other one was a discussion about the meeting from some of the participants who went to the May 15th CPCC meeting and their perspectives, both of the meeting in general, and then I'm not sure, Barb, remind me, who oversees the CPCC
It's
Is it
select
you or
board.
the select board?
Select board.
Okay, so I just also wanted to say that I had reached out to them via email and hadn't gotten a response directly to my question, and I believe there's one other person that I heard that also. I don't want to speak for somebody else, but I think there were two of us in talking that had reached out to them and hadn't been responded to.
Them
Subsequ-
being, I'm sorry.
The
them being-
CPCC.
Okay.
The CPCC. One of the things that became pretty clear to me at the CPCC meeting is that there was a lot of confusion about what constitutes a citizen complaint to the police department, what constitutes a citizen's complaint that then gets forwarded on to the CPCC, whether there's one form that does the citizen need to go in and say, I want to file a complaint to go on to the CPCC. Somebody who filed a complaint and filed it on the written complaint form from the police department that was then forwarded on to the CPCC, but she wasn't even aware of that. She wasn't told at the time she filled out the form. She learned of it at the CPCC meeting, that it was that complaint that had, that's why that was the focus of that meeting's agenda. So there's some real lack of clarity between the police department and the CPCC about policies and procedures and that kind of thing, that in order for both of the groups to work together and to be effective are going to need to be addressed. And I felt that needed to be brought to the select board's attention. And my third comment in that email to you was that during that CPCC meeting, Chief Rinn had made a comment that the police department might welcome some citizen participation in helping with domestic animal control when the situation wasn't a dangerous one, when the animal control officer was not available. And right after that, I got called because there was a situation. There was a loose dog at the co-op on a Sunday night. I don't believe the Humane Society is open on a Sunday night. So that was an opportunity. It had a happy ending. A few people got involved. The dog's owner was found, and the dog, went home happily and full of doggy biscuits. But, that would have been an opportunity. And at the time that I got the call, I really didn't know what to do with it.
Let me just, I've heard that before, and again, I wasn't at any meeting, so I'm just going to take everything as this is the way it was.
Sure.
But I've had a conversation with the Humane Society, and the town will not be involved in the training of any citizens on how to handle non-violent or non-aggressive animal complaints. That's just doesn't make any sense, because how do you know what's going to be when a situation is going to be bad? If the Humane Society wants to do that, which I was told by their executive director, no way,
Okay.
That's not going to happen. So I apologize if there's a thinking out there that there's going to be a citizen training or a citizen group that would be trained to deal with animal issues, because I think both speaking for the town, that's just not a liability that we don't have the expertise to do it. It would have to be the Humane Society that would, and they said that they were not interested in that. However, you can always check with them to see if they've changed their mind. I don't want to speak for them.
Yeah, sure. No, I can understand. I mean, right away I thought about the legality issues and implications for having folks.
Right.
However, there remains then that on a Sunday night when the Windham County Humane Society is not open, you can only call the police department.
Correct.
And
but just to clarify with that,
Sure.
the Humane Society, in my understanding, they don't come out and pick up animals. They don't come out. So if you call the Humane Society and say that there's a stray animal here,
No, no.
so it's always the town, it's always the police department that people should call. I understand that what you're saying, Ann, is that there's trust that needs to be rebuilt. I understand that, and that we're willing to work with people and to do that, to see how we can do that. But the reality is, if there is a situation and you feel that there's an animal that needs attention, that it is going to be the police that need to be called, and I hope that people will do that if there is that need.
in this particular situation, the dog was extremely friendly. He was well behaved. So somebody had offered to take it to the Humane Society, and then somebody else said, "Oh, but they're not open tonight." So that's what you know. This was
That's
just
a problem
that particular.
we wish they were 24/7.
Yeah. So there's a big gap in coverages, as Chief Rim stated.
There is, and the reality is that Brattleboro's fortunate because we have more coverage than any other town in this region. You know, I talked with the town manager in Putney who's saying, "Is there something we can do?" You know, and so animal issues are a problem for all towns. And to be honest, you know, we're fortunate in Brattleboro to have the services, to have a 24/7 police department that you can call, because there aren't a lot of towns that have that, and also to have a 40-hour-a-week animal control officer, to have one person that's paid to specifically deal with animal concerns and complaints is really fortunate.
I appreciate that. I'm not. Do you need to be recognized by your board?
I'm waiting till your conversation is done. I know that she's got her hand.
Oh, okay. Thank you. She's looking at me. I don't know if I'm
No, I
supposed
wasn't
to be recognizing
I'm looking at you
Dora.
because you're talking.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'll learn the ropes. I promise. Okay. And I do appreciate that. Things don't always happen during the 40 hours when the animal control officer is on. And as Chief Wren had said, in a perfect world, they would be out doing the really important work that they are hired to do versus picking up dogs who have managed to escape from their owner while they're walking on Mount Wantasticate. So the protocol is that the police department gets called when there is a dog. Okay. And what do they do with an animal that would come in, just for example, on a Sunday night?
They would take it to the Humane Society, it depends on the animal and the state of the animal, whether it would be something that would go to the Humane Society, that they would take to the Humane Society, or whether they'd have to call a vet.
Okay, thank you. I was unclear about that. And does the town or the county have a game warden locally?
There is
wild animals.
There's a state, what's it called?
Fish and Wildlife.
Fish and Wildlife, but there's not a game warden.
Okay, so it's Fish and Wildlife if it's a wild animal.
There's Fish and Wildlife, and to be honest, we have that's one of our issues that we have is Fish and Wildlife. You can call them, and they're going to be at least a couple hours away, and so you're going to be waiting minimally, you know, a couple hours. So if you have, you know, the reality is we end up being put in a situation in which we have to deal with wild animals because we had a rabid fox, and Kathy waited 2 hours, and Fish and Game then said it'll be a few more hours. You can't wait for that, and so that's a particular problem that we're having, that we're being put in situations that we really shouldn't be put in. But again, at some point it becomes a public safety issue, and you have to make those decisions.
Dora?
Just a comment on this piece of it. There's definitely some holes in the system, and I would strongly encourage people who are really interested to try to work with the Humane Society to increase services, or to think about, you know, establishing an animal rescue. You know, it's done in a lot of other communities, and it's definitely. I mean, I've personally had the experience of having an injured animal and trying to figure what to do with it, and calling the police department, and then watching them try to figure out how to get treatment for that animal. And so, you know, it's definitely it's an ongoing issue. And if it's off hours and it can't go to the Humane Society, it's a work in progress. That's all I can say.
Okay, well, it is good to know and be clear about the fact that there isn't support from the town and there isn't support from the Humane Society, that the channel, when the animal control officer is not on duty, is to call the police department.
Correct. Thanks. That is good to have out there. Appreciate that.
Yeah, okay. The thing that concerns me the most was the real lack of clarity and the confusion that was caused during the CPCC meeting about the fact that it appears that there are 2 different citizen complaint forms, one from the police department and one that can be filled out for the CPCC. There was also some confusion about what constitutes a formal complaint versus an informal complaint. Is a formal complaint only when somebody handwrites it themselves, Or can a formal complaint also be when a police officer takes it and writes, you know, I did this interview? Why it was that in this particular instance, I believe it was Captain Kerrigan. Am I getting that right? Is it Captain Kerrigan or Lieutenant?
It doesn't, if there's, probably specifics don't
There's
matter.
a Sergeant Kerrigan. Sergeant Kerrigan. Two of the witnesses were interviewed by Sergeant Kerrigan. One was termed a formal complaint, and the other one was not. And when I asked why it wasn't, the answer was because the person said that they didn't want to be contacted again. Actually, what the report says is that the person would prefer to not be contacted again, which is different, in my opinion, than saying, I don't want to be contacted again. I still don't understand why it is that a person who's gone to the trouble to go to the police department and be interviewed, why that is not considered a formal complaint.
I would be happy to work with Tristan on this. He and I met prior to the meetings and discussed that there are some issues with the process that's in. And part of that had to do with some of the turnover in the CPCC, and so I'd be happy to get with them, and I think we talked about getting with them and trying to ensure that the communications between the department and the committee are working well, and that to address some of those things that were confusing.
And would that include the CPCC having what the policies and procedures are from the police department side as far as what triggers a citizen complaint?
That we do when a new CPCC when there are new people on that committee, the chief and the captain do trainings with them on policies, etc. They're offered to do ride-alongs. We try to do that as much training with them on that set of that side of the process as possible. We're at a new beginning in July, and I'm sure we'll be paying specific attention to these types of things.
Okay. Well, what I would just like to interject is that you said that you would be working with Tristan in this specific instance where.
That's distracting. Is there a problem?
I'm not sure if you're talking to me or somebody else.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. In the specific instance where you're talking about what constitutes a formal complaint and an informal complaint, that doesn't have anything to do with Tristan. That's within the police department, is what I'm talking about.
And however, that does come within the conversations with the CPCC and the police department that we'll be having in the open meeting with the CPCC.
Okay, great. All right. Thanks.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry, Anna, I didn't mean to. I was standing up and I think it got them confused. Can I just say two things really quick about that, and not as a representative, formal thing from the committee, but just to say that I'm not here formally for the committee, but we did talk about these issues tonight before this meeting, and we are going to be reaching out to the select board to invite some participation to address some of these very questions going forward.
Great.
I was going to do the reverse and request that, because it looks from the calendar that the CPCC is meeting on Tuesday, July 17th, and our next regularly scheduled meeting is also on the 17th, and continuing in our process of meeting with various committees and having them report to the board, I would request that the CPCC be on deck for.
I would actually request that be delayed until we can meet and work out the system so that we can then kind of clearly address and let the citizens know about the new system so that citizens have a clear understanding of complaints. Pardon me?
But you're going to have new members.
You have new members coming up.
And there's two things where we are looking at changing our dates so that we're not always meeting at the same time as the select board. So that's one. That date might not actually be the one that is going to be held. And then I would say that, Barb, your comment is in the spirit of what we were saying tonight, which is that we do need to do some work. We were hoping that might be done and then brought to the select board.
David, did you have your hand up?
I'm all set for now.
Okay. Yes.
Hi, Pat D'Angelo, Brattleboro, District 2, 38 Clark Street. There are because of the number of issues involving animals, in particular dogs in Brattleboro. There's a small group of us that have gotten together, and we're trying to organize into a group that can address some of these issues with the town, with the police department, with the CPCC. But I think it's really, really important. One of the things is the communication. And the town might meet with CPCC and have a wonderful meeting, come to all kinds of agreements. Who else knows about it? Who else knows what policies and procedures are being formulated? A quick example, policy, police are called out on an aggressive dog situation. Policy, try to get hold of someone from the Humane Society, and this is just theorizing, or a game warden. Procedure, hold the dog at bay, get a net maybe, and throw it over the animal to keep yourself safe and the animal safe. And that kind of thing, that should be formulated, and I'm hoping that perhaps our little group might help in formulating some of those things, because there are so many issues out there. Incredible. Because of the recent incident with my little guy up at Marlboro, I have strangers stopping me on the street asking me how he is and relating how their dogs were jumped on, attacked, threatened by unleashed dogs. You wouldn't believe it. You simply would not believe it. So I think there's a lot of discussion that has to take place, and we may be very fortunate in Brattleboro for what we do enjoy, but I think it's too little. And I think we really have to think about it and put something in place that are going to protect animals and citizens.
Thank you.
So if we could, can we talk to somebody about policies and procedures? Are there any written ones at all? Or is it kind of like off the top of your head?
But there are not currently any specific policies or procedures with regard to how an officer relates to an animal. We actually reached out to other departments in the state, to the state police, and no law enforcement, to the League for model policies, to the accreditation agency that accreditates law enforcement departments. There are no policies in any of those.
It's amazing.
Because we
You would think
reached
there'd
out
be a
for model.
base one, you know, just
yeah,
a
we
base
reached out for
model.
some model things.
Well, maybe we can help you on
and
that.
for some so that's kind of part of what we're struggling with. We've talked with the Humane Society about that.
Okay, thank you.
Terry?
Terry Carter. Yeah, and as you mentioned earlier, there wasn't a time not too long ago when the systems were more in sync. The Humane Society used to be open longer hours. The game warden was accessible. There was a network of local veterinarians that could euthanize an animal that needed to be euthanized on off hours. And I don't think it's unrealistic or unreasonable to start a dialogue and find common ground. Is, you know, we had discussed the other day with Chief Wren that it is a common concern for a number of us. I would be very interested in getting involved in some sort of dialogue and how we can work this out. I don't think it's unworkable because it was not too long ago when these things actually were in place. Income?
Make a comment?
Yep.
I missed the past two meetings when this, or meeting or two meetings when this incident in dog shooting was discussed. I would just like to, a couple of things I'd like to say, and again, one is that the death of and having to put down any domestic animal is pretty it's an unfortunate and pretty regrettable event. The chief has said that in his years being here, which is 25 years, this is the first time he's had to deal with this. So it's also a rare event. But it is, so it's uncommon, it's unfortunate, and it's incredibly regrettable. Nobody looks forward to this. Nobody wants to have this conversation. And it's something that I think everybody, when you heard of it, was, oh, man. But this is now about the third time, and then we've had 2 CPC meetings where this has been talked about, and there is such a huge elephant in the room we are not talking about. If we spend all of our time focusing on how the police or how the Humane Society is going to respond to animals that are running loose or animals that are, we've missed the cause. We've missed the cause of the event. The cause goes back to owners. I am so frustrated that we have yet to have a conversation where we hold accountable the owner of that animal. That was a domestic animal. That animal had his ears and his tail clipped. It was owned by someone. And we have continued to come back to the town and say, what did you do that for? What did you do that for? There's a time and there's a place for that conversation. I agree it needs to be held. But for us to now in 3 meetings and 2 CPC meetings to totally ignore the fact that we have irresponsible pet owners, we're going to be here again. And it doesn't matter what policies we put into place. It doesn't matter whether we have a net or we don't have a net. We're going to be here again. And for me, that's really frustrating, because it's really frustrating to know that we're being set up and put in a position where we're going to be here again. And I apologize for being rather emotional about this, but I'm a dog owner too. And you know what, Pat? I read about Tink and I read about your attack, and I know you're mad as heck at the owner or the person who had that dog.
At the owner. Exactly.
At the owner who had that dog.
Yes.
And I think it's high time we had a conversation with the Humane Society, because I'm going to be real honest, the town is not in, we've got, how will we address this? We'll address this by the way we do, which is if you're unlicensed, we will fine you. That's what we do. That's our authority. We're not going to go out, we're not going to start talking to owners about proper ownership of animals and how to be a good owner, because that's not our role. And it shouldn't be. We have a lot of work to do, and that's not going to be one of the things we take on. I encourage you, and I encourage the Humane Society, and I encourage the veterinarians in the area to talk really, to talk to the pet owners. And to do education on pet owners, and to tell people, you talk about unleashed animals. Unleashed animals are animals that are owned by someone who has allowed their animal to be unleashed. So I hope that at some point the cause of the problem gets talked about. I don't think it's necessarily a topic for the select board, but I sure hope it gets talked about, because it's frustrating for me, who is responsible for the people who have to go to those calls. And it's frustrating for me as a pet owner. So I hope at some point the energy that we have, that this incident isn't wasted.
Yes, Terry.
Barb, in all respect, I was not even going to bring this up tonight, but in all fairness, it was not this particular dog's fault that its owners were irresponsible. And I just want to reiterate, the police knew for a couple days about this stray animal, and there was absolutely no reason under any circumstances that this poor animal had to die in the inhumane way it died. And I'm sorry, I was not going to bring it up tonight, but I was not comfortable with what you just did. I think we had a very productive evening.
Okay.
And I just wanted to point that out.
I hope we become more productive.
And in our conversation the other day, I do hope you know, that the personnel issue with the particular lieutenant who did this, that there will be some public assurance that proper discipline and procedures will be taken. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Anyone else? Thank you. Thank you for those who've participated.
Dora's got her hand up.
To my left, excuse me, Dora.
Well, I just want to comment on what Barb said, and that is that we don't really have any control over what individuals do related to anything. That's why we have a police department. That's why we have policies and procedures in place to deal with irresponsible criminal behavior. So to say, you know, yeah, it's definitely, you know, the responsibility of the owners to take good care of their animals, but the fact of the matter is, while there are humans, there are going to be irresponsible and criminal humans, and you know, it's perfectly within the rights of the individual sitting here and outside in the public to talk about how to improve procedures and policies to be able to make sure that those events, when they do happen, are handled in a way that we all want them to be handled.
Well, Dora, that may well be true. But the primary responsibility of the police that we employ is to deal with core public safety issues, with conduct that is destructive, that is malicious, that is unpredictable. And those officers, day in and day out, put their lives and their safety on the line dealing with these core issues. And I think Barb is exactly right. Animal control is vested in the responsibility of the animal owner, responsibility for care, shelter, feeding, and for keeping that animal licensed. And I think Barb's exactly right, that there's been no discussion throughout this dialogue about the responsibility of the animal owner in this matter. I absolutely agree with Barb.
I'm not asking that the responsibility of the town and the officer be not discussed and not be. I'm just saying by the third to fifth meeting of a topic, I would hope that at some point we'd be talking about ownership and the responsibilities of ownerships.
Pat?
Just real quick, when can we start that discussion about ownership? Because I'm totally in agreement with you too.
I started it right now, Pat.
And good. And let's go on with it. The only way we're going to change the behavior of people is by fines, money, out of their pockets. And in order to do that, we're going to have to be able to identify them, because they have a tendency to run off, you know, when their dog attacks, unleashed dog attacks, in other words. So I'd love to see it go on. At a select board meeting, perhaps not. But maybe we can communicate by letter to begin with, or email, and set up some kind of meeting and maybe we can come up with some proposals that might help.
And I think the Humane Society is interested in looking at this as a campaign that they're interested in doing as well.
Okay, good.
Thank you. Okay. Next item.
After action
Hurricane
review.
Are there people here for M?
For what?
For item M before we get to item L?
Yes, you did.
Yeah. Chris,
There are people here, and that's what it
Right.
They-
You know what I'm saying? Even if,
is. Do we, you
I'm
want?
wondering if there's people here for item M first.
Well, can I, before we get there, I actually would move to table item L, only because Chris specifically requested it. So it would be great
So
to,
we'll table this until July 17th. I accept a motion to.
Is
I
that
would accept
okay?
a motion to table this to July 17th.
I move to table it until the next regular scheduled.
Is it
All
possible?
those in favor signify by saying aye.
Is it
Use July 7th. You have to use
July
July
17th, sorry.
Is it possible to get that report ahead of time? Or do you?
Okay.
It'll be in your next packet.
Thank you.
All right.
quiver
Item
with
M.
anticipation.
Wait, do we have to vote on table?
I thought we did.
I
Okay,
vote-
all those in
I'm
favor
good.
signify by
Sorry.
saying aye. Aye. There you go.
M. This is greatly anticipated. The Union Station project, bus turnaround green space, is nearing completion. We anticipate by, we're hoping July 1, although it's looking more like maybe mid-July. We'll get some good weather coming up. It will be completed. The one remaining item that we have then is the building known as the Archery Building, 26 Depot Street, that we now own. What I'm asking of the board, there have been inquiries into the building to say, what could it be used for? What's the town wanting to do with it? The building is structurally sound. It is also, while it's not on the Register of Historic Buildings, it is eligible for that. It is believed to be the first railroad station for the town, and I've received probably 4 different inquiries about what could be done, uses that could be for the building. With that, there's not really been a discussion at the board level of, what do we want to do with it. And what I suggest to the board is that we actually put out a request for proposals to secure ideas for reuse of the building. I had put a draft in the incomplete draft of a request for proposals in there. That what we'd be asking people to do is talk to us about, what would you see as the reuse of the building? How would you be using it? How would you be because we do not at this point have any budget for renovation of the building or anything, and because renovation of the building could be very specific to the use of the building, what I would suggest is that we seek proposals. We seek proposals from folks who would be interested in actually financing the rehabilitation and the renovation of the building, and that the town then or the board could then enter into a longer-term lease agreement with that entity. I think a long-term lease agreement would be great, in which the entity would actually kind of take over maintenance of the building. They would be, and as I said, they'd be doing the renovations of the building. So what I would be proposing is that we have kind of in a review of the process, that there would be a review initially just by kind of an ad hoc committee whose only purpose would be just to review to make sure that that all the applications kind of meet minimum criteria, which is essentially that they've submitted their use, that they've agreed to some of the restrictions that would be on the building due to its historic nature, and those are actually relatively minimal. They have to deal with maintaining the existing outer walls, not the addition part that's in the front, just the original building, maintaining the windows, or retaining the windows, and retaining the stone foundation. That's what was identified by historic preservation as the historic characters of the building. The ad hoc committee would consist of representatives, and this is just my proposal to the board, of the Union Station Committee, the Planning Commission, the Small Business Assistance Committee, and the Arts Committee. And that they would then, this committee would then rank the proposals and then would submit them with comments to the Select Board. The Select Board could then review these proposals, meet with applicants, and they would then enter, when a successful applicant was decided, they would enter into contract negotiations.
Let me interrupt you for a second, because
Sure.
you just said 2 different things with the committee. First you said the committee would just review the documents to make sure that they follow the criteria. And now you've just said that you would have the committee ranking the proposals to submit to the board. And I would prefer that they not do that. I think that the board here needs to play a much bigger role in this than rather having almost a rubber stamp, having something come from a committee and say, this is our number one choice. I don't have a problem with them making sure that the committee makes sure that every proposal follows what the RFP is looking for. But I think at that point, I would then turn it over to the board for a board discussion. And
That's totally up to the board.
Ken? Or Dora, excuse me.
Part of reviewing criteria is actually ranking it, and you don't necessarily have to rank the projects themselves, but you do need to rank the pieces of the project in some way so that you can review it. The concern I have about this, because I mean, I think this is actually a good idea. I think that we've missed a piece of the process before we do this RFP, and that is to actually have the public discussion with the broader public about what people would like to see there before we do the RFP process. We've mentioned that a few times about the fact that we haven't had the public discussion, and for me, I would like to see that happen first, and then do the RFP process rather than having a public dialogue about the things that come out of the RFP.
Can I explain why I suggested it this way? I suggested it this way for a couple of reasons in this order, that the public process would fall under the select board once the RFPs have come out. Once the responses have come back, it goes to the board, which I would assume then have at a public meeting explain what has come in, not necessarily enter into contracts, but would have some type of public process. I suggested it that way for a couple of reasons. One is because we don't know, we are not, if this was a project where the town was investing all of its own funds, I would open it up first to the public comment. But because the town, and again, this could be the difference if the select board would want to talk about utilizing funds on that. But because we are in this situation, simply requesting proposals, and essentially the financial obligation for that building and the renovations and the maintenance, et cetera, are going to fall on to someone to start with the public process. We may have more ideas that aren't actually financially feasible, because we're going to need some other entity who's going to be financially interested and committed to the project. That's the only reason I did it the reverse way, so that you start with people who are coming in ready to make the financial commitment.
I was thinking of something more than just the select board meeting. I was thinking of, a real sort of charrette, sort of creative reach out to people to really get ideas. I think actually you might end up with better RFPs if you go through that process first, because it may change people's actual application, having had that sort of public process. I don't think it changes. I don't think it actually affects that, because I think when you have a public meeting, people have the understanding, you give them the basic understanding of the fact that it's somebody else investing the money and that the town isn't doing that, and it's really more people have long awaited this, and we've had some processes. We had the Michael Singer project. We had, but it's never been done sort of as a town thing, and I think that if we're going to own a building, that I don't think having that kind of process damages the ability of RFPs to come through. I think it actually might inform some people, and you might actually get less that are not feasible by just having conversations about it. I just think that that to me is the piece that's missing that we should have before we do the RFP process, and that does, that can just be one sort of public.
Okay.
I think the problem is, though, that the people who show up to the charrette, exactly what you said is also the problem. The people who show up to a charrette are not the same people who submit an RFP. So if you play this out and you do I'm all for a public process, and I really appreciate the two sides of this when it takes place. Mm-hmm. If you have the charrette and people get excited about an idea that never manifests in an RFP, in solid RFPs that come forward, then we're handicapping the RFPs from the start. They're proposing things that didn't come out of the charrette, because those two aren't necessarily the same. So you have the charrette, people get really excited. We think that the Archer building, let me speak for myself, should absolutely be a bowling alley. So it should be a bowling alley, and then the RFP, so cool. The RFPs come and they're not, and it's A, B, and C, but none of them have anything to do with bowling. Automatically, there's some discontent. Well, why don't the RFPs fit with what we said out of the charrette? There's the possibility of the charrette informing the RFPs, but that's not necessarily going to be the case because they could be two different people. So I want the public process, but in some ways I want the public process on the ideas that actually come forward, just because it might not happen that the ideas that come out of the charrette inspire RFPs. And if they don't, which they often don't, there's already not going to be the buy-in with the people who are stepping forward and creating the RFP. And then the other piece that I want to say, and you might have to read it again, you don't have to read it again, but was there someone from the Planning Commission on that?
Yes.
And was there someone from the DRB on that?
No, because I thought there'd be a conflict.
That's my question. Okay.
Dave?
I think I agree with Ken and Barb about the timing of public discussion, with all due respect. But I am sure that if there's going to be discussion early on about use, I don't really know exactly what the select board's role is. I don't want to have a select board meeting where we're having people talk about their hopes and dreams for that building without any real connection to the public-private partnership that's going to have to be developed. So if there were to be room for that discussion beforehand, I don't think it's at a select board level. I think that's my personal view. That's one thing. Specifically with respect to the RFP, I've got two concerns. Mm-hmm. One of them has to do with the timing. Mm-hmm. I don't want to nitpick. I just want to make sure that it's not too tight a time frame.
I had trouble with that, yeah.
It seems to me that having just one viewing on July 10th may be narrow, and it might be better to have two opportunities. It seems that making this one viewing on the 10th followed by 4 weeks later, the RFP coming in seems like too short a time frame, particularly given the summer months. So I think maybe stretching it out to 2 meetings and then the end of August, unless there's a problem with that, might be prudent. I was also a little bit concerned about the respective obligations and rights to pull out that are imposed and written into this agreement. Mm-hmm. It seems to me that the town is allowed to reject anything at its complete discretion, but by submitting a proposal, the vendor offers to enter into the contract. And I'm a little bit concerned about whether that's really what we're talking about at this stage. It seems to me, I don't want the people who I don't want at this point for people to be limited in what they're proposing based upon the notion that we're going to be holding them in through the process to be able to complete at the end of the day what they've proposed.
Yeah,
so I'm concerned with that language.
That should actually, you're right, and that should actually be by submitting the vendor actually is offering to enter into contract negotiations, and this was a template from the more traditional RFPs, so it should be contract negotiations, and thank you.
Dora?
And I like the idea of the two site visits. I like that, actually. It's good.
Just to respond, it doesn't have to be the select board. It could be a committee doing it. I think you're going to get grief no matter which way you do it. But we get complaints about process all the time. We get complaints about the fact that people say, why is this going out to an RFP? We didn't even have a public meeting about it. And this happens over and over and over again with stuff. And I just think from a procedural standpoint, I think if it's facilitated right, that people understand that the ideas that they're coming out with aren't necessarily going to happen. It's just a matter of sort of giving the public the opportunity to have that dialogue. And, that the same amount of pushback could happen in a meeting in which you have a public meeting and it's started with all of the RFPs, the proposals, and people say, well, wait a minute, what about this? And you could do this with it. I mean, the same thing is going to happen in that kind of meeting. So I'm not sure that I'm not sure it makes a difference as far as which the kind of responses that might go off track, because it's going to happen in doing it both ways.
Well, I'm going to agree with Ken and Dave, and one of the things here is that we're looking for private money here, and I don't want to discourage anyone from putting whatever they think might be workable down there, because at the end of the day, this is a venture capital issue, and when you're looking at fixing up a building and maintaining that building and entering into a long-term contract with it, it's having money to invest, and for us to have a public process and go, well, you might have people in the room going, well, I don't think a restaurant would go there, and maybe I'm not crazy about a bowling alley, but maybe a skate park, or maybe something else.
Yeah, a skate park.
So,
it's been proposed.
So whatever it is, the proposals, we want to encourage people to put in an RFP, and then the screening process will be us, and that's where the public gets to weigh in. At the end of the day, what is going to go there? So I don't want to have a conversation beforehand and really turn away people that says, well, the board wasn't too enthusiastic because a couple of people said, I don't want to see that. It's kind of like stores on Main Street. You ask everybody what kind of store they'd like to see on Main Street, and you get 100 different answers for 100 different stores. So let's let the process go through. I like the recommended changes by David, and we'll have at it.
Can I have
Go one more.
clarification on, do you want that ad hoc committee to rank, or no? Is there consensus on that?
I wanted to make sure that there's a town employee on that ad hoc committee, the Rod.
Okay.
So I want the happy medium of I don't want them ranked, but I also don't want just the checklist. I would really
I like Dora's idea about not necessarily totaling out things, but looking at the different, meets with the.
I want to see some narrative.
Yeah.
I think we want them evaluated. We
Yeah,
want
I mean,
to evaluate the proposals.
It's how they did like the West River Park the skate,
Okay.
Park and Rec. I think it can be done without them recommending one over the other.
Okay?
So it's more providing comment and evaluation. We'll evaluate and provide comment.
That reflects the constituencies that they represent. I mean, we're asking someone from the Planning Commission for a reason. We're asking someone from the Arts Committee, so they're bringing that perspective in, and I would like to see that reflected in what they say.
Okay.
Is there anybody who's in attendance who wants to speak to it?
Yes.
Right.
Well,
That's good.
Before we get Kate up there, I mean, one of the things is that we always have our conversation first and then invite the public too. So, are we done? Sounds like it. Kate?
Kate Anderson, Brattleboro. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss this. I have several different sets of people who have great interest in this since this, just the warning for the meeting came out. And the questions I've been asked are, is there the possibility of a site visit? Yes. Apparently you folks have quite a bit more information than we have in terms of there being a site visit scheduled on the 10th.
Okay, 1 second, can you make copies of this? This is draft, and so
Okay.
we have dates in here. It's not the actual RFP until that gets announced.
Okay, so those are going to be some of my questions.
Okay, but if you can, we'll get copies for you folks, and we can put this up, but just so it's draft, and then if people respond to the RFP, they have to respond to the actual RFP and
Right.
get a copy of it from,
Great.
I just want people to, yeah.
Okay. So,
Because I'm sure there's going to be an addendum to this RFP because we're still waiting on more specific information from the state if there's any, on the corrective action plan for the brownfield, if there's any implications on that, from that on this RFP. So just so people know that it's...
okay. Within that information, are there building specs?
Yeah, there are some specs of the building with regard, you have what I have, which is the square footage.
Okay. All I have is just the tonight's.
Well, you will have what
Okay,
I have,
great,
which is the
great,
square
very
footage.
good. And it will have when the RFP is due?
Yes.
Okay.
But it's going to be extended. What we had in here was that there's going to be, initially I had one site visit and then the applications were due. What I just heard from the board is that they would like one site visit, and that site visit, we're hoping to get it done July 10th. So that means this will be going out before the end of this week. The final RFP will go out before the end of this week. And then we'll have a site visit July 10th. We will have, Bob Stevens will be there to show the building because he's a structural engineer and he
Right.
actually did the work in there. So people will go in there. There will then be a second site visit 3 or 4 weeks later so that people can see it again. The issue that we have with maintaining the site visits is because getting in the building, how it's not just a locked door, it's drilled shut and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's our issue with it.
Yeah.
And then RFPs, the actual submission will occur probably late August.
Okay. The discussion about it being eligible for placement on the Register of Historic Buildings, there are probably a lot of questions that are going to come up about that. Does that mean that it's a choice of the designated user or renter or whatever the entity, vendor I believe it was called a minute ago, the entity
Applicant,
using the building, is it their choice as to whether or not to apply for
Probably
historic?
one of the conversations that would
Okay.
occur
Okay.
with the board. In some ways, the conversation actually will probably be centered around, is there additional funding available
Right.
because it's on that? May or may not be, because it is acknowledged as a historic building. It's just not on the register.
Right, and therefore all of the restrictions.
And that's some of the information we're trying to get from the SHPO office.
Okay, all right. With regard to the question brought up of, Dora talked about a charrette and this discussion as to how this possibility should be rolled out, I actually wonder if perhaps that discussion isn't going to be so necessary with the reformer here. This is an item of great interest, and I think the discussion is going to start now. It's probably all, I mean, just from my perspective, it's already underway. A story or a press release is going to open up an awful lot of discussion. The commentary that I was hearing there, what I think I was hearing was, if there's a charrette, then there might be people who don't have completely predictable design plans for it or usage plans for it, that it just would be an evening or a period of time collecting ideas that can't be acted upon. I think the fact that the story is out, that the building is available with all of the conditions, that in itself is going to eliminate pie in the sky or just pure idealism. I think this has already started. I think the conversation has already started is the only point I'm trying to make here. Great. Okay. I think that's all.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes. And please state your name.
Ann Latches, Vice President of the Brattleboro Outing Club and Director of the Brattleboro Rowing Program. I was looking at the list of the ad hoc committees you were thinking about, and I saw arts on there and some others, and I was thinking perhaps just suggesting the Brattleboro Rec Board, because it's close to the water and there's recreation, not
That's
just
nice.
a pretty site.
That's a good idea.
Thank you.
And I'm really dismayed. I'm on vacation the week of July 10th. I'm telling the whole world now, but it would be great if there could be a full visit on another time this summer.
Yeah, we'll have a second one.
Not just a sort of a follow-up, but with the architect and all that. I'm feeling a little crunch. You're talking about late August. That's very short time for the type of proposal you're looking for, I think, to getting funding together and architectural plans and whatever you got to do to see if it's even going to be feasible. So, I mean, we can't even think about, do we want to even put a minute into this if it's not even going to be remotely possible? So I'd ask for a longer period of time.
I would agree with you, and I have no problem with, this project. Like I said before, I had hair when the Union Station project started, so delaying this another month till the end of September gives people adequate time to...
Is that enough time, do you think?
I don't know. I have no idea. I don't feel like it is, but
Till the
I don't know what
September.
the hurry is. I mean, for us to get something together, it might be a year, but we could certainly get a proposal there, but we're not going to be ready to move in a year, so, I don't think there's a huge hurry on it, but to get something in the building. Okay. To get the proposals, give people some time to really be meaningful with them and really be thorough. I would like more than the summer, because I think the summer is vacation time for a lot of people.
End of September?
Okay. Well, it's not my choice, so.
I have a thought in response to this, and I mean, we've done this before with RFPs where we have sort of the tiered application. What if we sort of do, they do that with grant proposals too, where you put in sort of an initial kind of outline and then you do the full proposal. But if we give a deadline for, an initial, kind of proposal, give some feedback on it, but then give another one for a full proposal.
Yeah, but the specifications for this proposal are really very general. I mean, it says narrative clearly describing nature of the business, description of the renovations that would be undertaken, and a financial business plan. We're not talking about the blueprints and the architectural renderings.
This is the first time I've seen anything tonight, and I've been asking for
It's pretty,
a
the
month.
idea is
It was
for
very
it to
general.
be general, so that then there can be more conversation and discussion, so that applicants aren't investing a lot of money into the application.
All right,
It doesn't require proof of funding.
great.
And that's why I had that concern about the then reciprocal obligations, which would have bound the applicants to going through with the contract. That didn't seem to make sense.
I liken this to the Small Business Assistance Loan Program, in which people come up, they have to have a business plan, they have to have their finances to some degree, but they're also they're not coming in with, if they were coming in with every I dotted and T crossed, they'd probably be going over to the bank, so. I liken it
end
to
of
that.
September.
Yes.
End of September? That's
Yep.
right.
And how will I know where the application is and all that sort of thing? I mean, how will you get that out to the public?
We'll do a press release on it.
Okay.
And you can call Jan, or you can watch the town website. We'll have it on our town website. We'll have that they're available on the town website. And then you'll have to talk to Jan to actually get the application, and we only do that. So because we know there may be some addendums on there, and we just want to have the contact information so that everybody gets all the information as it comes out.
And the announcement for the public, the viewing, the building tour?
That'll all be part of
in
the
public announcement?
The public announcement. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Marcia Steckler, just a local citizen from Brattleboro.
There's no just.
And I want to say, first of all, thank you to the Select Board, thank you to the town for being willing to take this particular property and to have moved it to the point that it is, and to now be prepared to open it up to the community and say, what do you envision as possible here? And tell us about your dreams, your ideas. I like the RFP process. Thank you very much for proposing it, because I do think people are going to start dreaming, and I think they're going to start dreaming realistically. And I also do like the idea that Dora mentioned of this being a graduated process, because out of the RFPs that may come forward, I hope it won't be considered an either-or for what emerges, that there might indeed be opportunity for some collaborative arrangement, that you may have 2 or even 3 proposals that could coexist and share that space, and maybe even collaborate in that ownership of it for perhaps even as many as 3 separate purposes. Mm-hmm. And so I welcome, I'm saying kudos to you for doing this, and I would welcome you to keep an open mind and allow it to percolate up and maybe become the collaborative, wonderful, creative outcome that this town is so known for. And that's basically what I have to say, because I love most of the organizations that I think will be coming to the table on this. And as a parent, you don't love any one of your children more than the others, and you like to see them all come home for Thanksgiving. That's what I like to think of this as.
My mom had a favorite, I'm just saying.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, I move to authorize the town manager to complete and implement the request for proposal process to solicit proposals for renovation, utilization, and funding of the archery building on Depot Street.
Before there's a vote, can I just point to the board on a couple of important decisions I want you to recognize you're making? One is that you're interested in a long-term lease in which most of the financing for the renovations is done by the applicant, the maintenance by the applicant, and thus then the lease amount would be reflective of that.
And the maintenance of the building.
I have that right,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
But I just want to make sure that that's
I agree with that.
understood. Okay.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
3-1.
Next is the committee appointments. The committee, the close to accept applications was 5 p.m. last night, so we were not able to schedule interviews. We're going to ask that the board maybe set a special meeting to schedule interviews. The other reason we're going to want a special meeting is we want to set the tax rate as well, which we don't have the information on yet. What I have, what I've given the board is the committees that have uncontested seats, and so the board may wish to appoint these positions this evening. And at the very bottom, I list the following committees that do have, there is some competition for seats, and the board may want to hold interviews for those, and that would be the Arts Committee, the BCTV directors, Brattleboro Housing Authority, CBCC, DRB, Rescue Inc., and the Tree Advisory Committee. So these are what the board can do this evening, or may want to do this evening, or may want to do later.
When will we schedule the meeting for?
We're going to try to figure out, we're going to get with the listers to see when they have their...
Or hope, I would ask if we could set it, because I know it's hard to set, if we could either do it maybe even the week of July 9th, but earlier on that week. I checked with the town attorney about if that's okay. I don't know if that week is good for people or not.
No, not for me.
Okay. The week of the July 4th week, that Thursday or whatever. Friday, I guess, for doing interviews.
Tax rate at the parade.
We could do
While walking.
You could interview people at the parade. That could be the real content.
So let's try to set it that week, if not even July 2nd.
July 2nd's okay. People are
Monday.
okay with that.
Do that Monday. I just assume. Okay.
I would like to read these in.
Oh no, yeah, I agree with this
Okay.
here, but we're trying to get
Yeah.
that so we can schedule those interviews and do the tax rate. Okay. Here we have names before us, and you would need to make a motion. And actually, you can even inject someone else's name in here if you. Well, you can't because they would have to have had permit. So excuse me. All right. So we're up. Agricultural Advisory Board.
Can we just make one broad motion to appoint all these people?
I kind of want to read them
Oh
all.
yeah, but
real
I'm
quick,
expecting
yeah.
that's what I just heard. So you want to just read them all?
So I'm going to read them all real quick.
Shoot.
You move.
Okay, I'm waiting for him. No.
You move to appoint.
I move to appoint the following. To the Agricultural Advisory Board, Gary Stroud, Drew Adams, Charles Robb Sr., and Gary Gale. To the Conservation Commission, Peter Gaskill and Stephen Schreiner. To the Council on Aging, Jane Wheeler. To the Energy Committee, Jason Cooper to a 3-year term and Jed Leslie to a 2-year term. To the position of Energy Coordinator, Paul Cameron. To the position of Fence Viewer, Chris Grotke. We still need 2 more. To the Honor Roll Committee, Sherwood Lake Sr. and Edward Wright. To the Planning Commission, Gary Stroud and Mark Ether. To the Recreation and Parks Board, Bonnie Carr and Bob Neubauer. To the Traffic Safety, the Chamber Representative, Leo Schiff. To the Transportation Committee, Leon Boyd and Gary Stroud. To the position of Weigher of Coal, Tim O'Connor. The Collector of Taxes, Barbara Sundag. To the Acting Zoning Administrator, Rod Francis. The Pound Keeper, Kathy Barrows. And the Road Commissioner, Steve Barrett.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the nominated candidates signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 4-0. Thank you for all you people who volunteered.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Double pay this year. July 2nd for a special meeting?
Yep.
And 5 o'clock, so
5 o'clock, so
that
I can do the-
for interviews?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
That's it.
Meetings.
On Monday, June 25th at 6 p.m., the Planning Commission will be meeting in the Select Board Meeting Room. I went last week. I encourage people to go. On Tuesday, June 26th at 8:30 a.m., the Traffic Safety Committee will be meeting in the Select Board Meeting Room. At 4:30 p.m., also on Tuesday the 26th, the Finance Committee meeting will be meeting in the Select Board Meeting Room. At 5:15, also on Tuesday the 26th, the Conservation Committee will be meeting in the Hannah Cosman Room. And also on Tuesday the 26th, the West River Park meeting will happen at 6 p.m. in the Gibson-Aiken Conference Room. On Thursday the 28th at 6:30 p.m., the Skate Park Committee will meet in the Hannah Cosman Meeting Room. On Monday, July 2nd, the Select Board will hold a special meeting to interview candidates for committees. On Wednesday, July 4th, just a reminder that all day the offices will be closed for July 4th. We will be dressing in colonial garb for the parade. On Thursday, July 5th at 6 p.m., the Skate Park Committee will be meeting in the Hannah Cosman Room. On Monday, the 9th, I just did it. On Monday, July 9th at 6 p.m., the Planning Commission will be meeting in the Select Board Meeting Room. On Tuesday, July 10th at 4:30 p.m., the Finance Committee will be meeting in the Hannah Cosman Room. Also at 4:30 p.m., the Wastewater Treatment Plant Upgrade Oversight Committee will be meeting here in the Select Board Meeting Room. And at 7 p.m., I encourage everyone to go to the Tree Advisory Committee in the Hannah Cosman Meeting Room. On Monday, July 16th at 5 p.m., the Energy Committee will be meeting in the Hannah Cosman Room. At 6 p.m., the Rec and Parks Board will be meeting in the Gibson-Aiken Center. And at 7 p.m., the Development Review Board will be meeting in the Select Board Meeting Room. On Tuesday, July 17th, the Town Arts Committee will be meeting in the Hannah Cosman Room. The CPCC may or may not be meeting at 5:15 at a location that has not yet been determined. And at 6:15, the Select Board will hold its next regularly scheduled meeting. And with that, I move to adjourn.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 4-0. Thank you. Thank you, BCTV. Thank you, Chris.
And it's just those last two over there.
See you, Jan.